The voice of the 49ers is with us today. It's Greg Papa. Greg, I see that jersey behind you.
You
Are you
do.
Trey Lance now? Yeah.
Jeff Garcia, I took it right off his back last time I saw Jeff. So when I first joined the 49ers, the guy that brought me over is a friend of mine that I've known forever and ever and ever, Bob Sargent. We worked together at KNBR years and years ago. He was instrumental in me being hired by the Raiders. And obviously, all these years later, after 21 years with the Raiders, I'm over here. So what this signifies is I've been fired by most of the teams in the Bay Area now and then rehired by some of them. So a lot of the Bay Area broadcasters have done 3 teams, 4 teams. I'm the first and maybe only the only one. You got to lose a lot of jobs to work for. And the Sharks are clearly a big team. We're not saying that at all, but they're kind of the expansion team, the new one. So the Warriors, both baseball teams and both football teams. And the hard one is both football teams because most broadcasters, Bill King, Lon Simmons, John Miller, Ted Robinson, they've worked for both baseball teams, but I'm the only one to work for the Raiders and now the 49ers. So in their way of categorizing, and now the big five of the Bay Area sports teams. And that's all signed there. John Lynch has the John Hancock signing. He took up like most of the jersey with his signing. It was so big. But you got Kyle Shanahan, Al Guido, Jed York, Brent Schob, Bob Sargent delivered me that trophy. So at the time, I thought Jeff Garcia right away. I didn't realize it would turn into Trey Lance. So I guess that number 5 jersey, I'm going to have to take it out of the glass case, David, and give it a Trey one day. But for now, it's mine.
Yeah. For now, you're the one with the retired
Yeah,
five,
I
not
got it.
Trey Lance.
Yep.
John Lynch, Captain America, you'd expect them to have that John
Yeah,
Hancock signature
exactly.
on there.
Got to go with the big John Hancock. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Lon Simmons because I was talking about him last week because, as you know, it was 49ers Vikings week. And 49ers Vikings week means that I talk about the Steve Young Vikings run. Gets away again, just
Yes.
losing his
Greatest call
voice.
ever.
I mean,
Greatest call.
I've done my share play by play. I would love to do more in the future. You're the play by play guy, though. I want to know your opinion just on. I mean, you just gave it, but your analysis of that call. Because Steve, when I talked to Steve about that play, he loves imitating Lon Simmons' call. The whole voice cracking gets away again. It's iconic, right?
Well, I think Lon's, he's had so many great calls, and obviously the John Taylor touchdown call to win the Super Bowl was one of his very
Yep.
best. I mean, how can you get better than that one? But when I think of Lon, and I also referenced it during the game because when I just saw the gold helmets crashing into the purple helmets, and every time I come back from a break at Levi's, I mentioned that we're inside the Lon Simmons broadcast booth. I thought of, I think one of the greatest calls ever because it's a hard call to get. You have to be on it right away. Was when Jim Marshall scooped up the fumble. It was Billy Kilmer that
Wrong
actually
way.
fumbled on that and ran the wrong way.
Like keys
And
are,
Lon's
yeah.
call was immediately, he's running the wrong way. And he immediately gave it. He thinks he has scored a touchdown for the Vikings, but in fact, he has scored a 2-point safety for the 49ers. It was like he nailed it instantaneously. So I actually referenced that play during one time when I welcomed him back to the Lon Simmons broadcast booth because that was such a great call. I also think of the Anthony Carter playoff games when I think of
87, yeah.
49ers and Vikings. But that call, and that summarized Lon to me, David, where it's hard, honestly, to tell listening to one of my broadcasts how good the game is because I make, a 2nd and 3 sound like a game-winning touchdown. I kind of get a little excitable. Lon kept it nice and steady and even. So when you heard Lon get
Go
excited,
crazy. Yeah.
holy crap, what's going on? It must be big. So that particular call and the way he called it won't go down, it won't go down. I mean, his voice kind of cracks. You never heard Lon crack like that. So to me, the Jim Marshall run the wrong way and the Steve Young tackle breaking run against the Vikings, probably the two that come to mind, along with the John Taylor. But yeah, that's why this assignment for me means so much to me. When I first got to the Bay Area, Don Klein was the radio voice of the
Mhm.
49ers. And I think Don is the most underrated Bay Area broadcaster, especially in football. He was a superb broadcaster. I listened to him a lot. And I was going to take his call on the touchdown when he went up, touchdown 49ers. but I wound up making changes to that. But anyway, yeah. So when I go in that booth, I think of all the greats that have preceded me. Not actually that booth at Levi's, but even Bob Fouts, Dan's father, voice of the 49ers, and on it goes. Joe and Ted, and obviously what Lon did for so many years at the very highest level.
So where did the touchdown San Francisco, or where did that originate? Did you just come up with that on the fly during one game and stick with it?
No. Well, the first preseason I was with the 49ers was in 2019. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I honestly thought, and that season, that off season, we lost Don Klein and we lost Bob Fouts. I think it was the same year, same off season. They passed away in a short time. So as I said, when I first got to the Bay Area, when I first joined the 49ers, or hang on, hold on, I got a call here from the Lon Simmons family. They went right to that call. No, so anyway,
royalties.
I was gonna do touchdown 49ers as a tribute to Don Klein, but as I was playing with it in the preseason, the first year with the 49ers, in every preseason, I don't do. Can you hear me behind this long message? Hang on.
I can hear you.
I'm the one guy that has an old rotary phone. I only use it when my mom calls and when Al Davis would call me because we're both deaf. It was hard to hear each other, but Al's been gone for 10 years now, so I probably don't need that.
Wait till George Contos hears that you have a landline. He won't shut up about it.
Exactly.
I'd love to pick on you, man.
Yeah, exactly. So
hilarious.
The touchdown call. So I was going to do touchdown 49ers and that tribute to Don Klein. And I think I actually told his family I was going to do that when they came up to a game. But in the preseason, I do television. I don't do radio. So I'm not going to bust out the big touchdown call on TV. It sounds kind of weird. So I didn't do anything. The first two preseason games, my first year in 19, I didn't do anything. And as I was playing with the touchdown 49ers call, I kind of elongate. I don't know if you've heard, the touchdown part of the call is kind of long. So it's really physically hard to go as long with the touchdown and then go right into 49ers. It's like, even me, the human windbag, I kind of lose energy there. I can't do it. So I was looking for something else. So the third preseason game, we're going to play the Kansas City Chiefs.
On the road at Arrowhead, right?
I'm listening to Mitch Holtis, my friend and longtime voice of the Chiefs, and his touchdown call is touchdown Kansas City. So it just dawned on me, what if I went touchdown San Francisco? And it kind of got that. And plus, I just lost my dad. He died July 30th of that year. And his name is Frank. And that's the name of the city, St. Francis of Assisi. And it all kind of made sense because my dad was so proud, such a huge football fan. And I wanted to give him a little bit of a tribute. And it sounded better to do the three syllables, San Francisco. And also with the Raiders' intent to leave the Bay Area, I think it's important that fans know where this team is from. And it's, right away I got, well, they don't even play in San Francisco. They play in Santa Clara. Well, the Dallas Cowboys don't play in Dallas. The Buffalo Bills don't play in Buffalo. Hell, the New York Giants and New York Jets, not only don't they play in New York, they don't even play in New York State.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what it is in football. And I think it's important when you see the interlocking SF and on the helmet, you remember that they're not the 49ers. They're not I don't even like saying Niners a lot. I like to call them by their name, which is the 49ers. And I don't say like, San Francisco leads Minnesota 21-14. I don't say, I call them the 49ers. So I thought, at least 3, 4, 5, but depending on how many touchdowns they score a week, David, I would let people know that they are the San Francisco 49ers. They will always be the San Francisco 49ers, even they don't play in the city of San Francisco. So it was a lot of thought that went into it, but that's ultimately what I chose to do, and that's the reason why.
Well, that's fascinating and a wonderful tribute to your dad. I still remember that week 3 preseason game against Kansas City where you said, is that the first time you debuted or you just got
No, I didn't use it in the preseason at all.
Okay.
Again, it would sound funny.
Yeah.
On television.
On TV, you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this, the 2020 year, we didn't have any preseason games at all. And then this year in 2021, I don't use it on television because this sounds weird. The only time I used it was on a touchdown against the Raiders when it was week 3 when the Raiders came to Santa Clara.
With Jimmy at the start of the game?
No, it wasn't that one. It was I think it was Trey Lance's touchdown later in the game. I'm trying to remember which one it was. When Jimmy went in and dropped his shoulder, no, my breath got taken away on that one. Like, did he just get hurt on that play? Take it easy. So I didn't do it there. I think it was a Trey Lance touchdown run going the other direction. And the reason I did it was all the Raider fans going into the game. And it was a great Bay Area celebration. That was a weird game for me to do, obviously. But all the Raider fans were saying, you got to give us one touchdown, Raiders, today. And I'm like, well, first of all, you've got to score a touchdown today. And secondly, I've already been fired by too many teams. I'm not doing that. So I thought I'm going to give them a touchdown 49ers, touchdown San Francisco one time, just to kind of mildly stick it to them, but all in fun. I do love them. But the first time I did it in a regular season game was Marquise Goodwin scoring the touchdown. Remember in Tampa Bay, that first game? Yeah. Then they had 2 pick sixes later in the game, one from Richard Sherman, one from Ahkello Witherspoon. So sure, Marquise Goodwin was the first one on offense. Then we had 2 later defensive scores. First time I broke out the San Francisco.
It's amazing just from a football sense to go back to even that 2019 preseason and see the hints that the 49ers were showing that they were going to be a legitimate team. That week 3 game preseason against Kansas City, that was, at the time, I thought that first half, it was the dress rehearsal. I thought that was as well of a plate of a preseason game as I'd ever seen. And both teams are playing hard. Garoppolo threw some nice passes. Jimmy Ward almost took off Patrick Mahomes' head on that one scramble, and Andy Reid was furious, as he should have been, because Mahomes was risking that in the middle of the field. But I was like, wow, these look like 2 good teams. And little did we know at the time that was going to be a preview of the Super Bowl a few months later. It just so happened that was a really, really busy day in the NFL. Andrew Luck retired at halftime of that game.
I remember well.
Just a total flurry. But then you mentioned 2019 season opener against Tampa Bay. From the very first third down, when I saw Nick Bosa and Dee Ford coming around the edge, it was like, okay, this is a different team, right? Do you remember that feeling when the 49ers actually had an edge rush after? It was crazy.
Well, I remember that, David, the Wednesday of that first game in Tampa, going to practice. And if you remember, Dee Ford didn't do much that August. He had
the PRP, right? Yeah.
He had a PRP. He was gone. I think he had it right around the time my dad passed away. And then Bosa had a hammy or something. They weren't on the field at all, even in practice. So the first time I saw it was the Wednesday of the season opener, installation day, let's go. And they come out with what I called the Gold Rush, which is a tribute to, they called that the Cedric Hardman, his rookie year, when they had that great pass rush back in the 70s. It was called the Gold Rush. That technically it's the turbo package, but really, going back then, it was their base defense as well, was the same, because it was Dee Ford at one end, it was Nick Bosa at the other, and the 2 tall firs, as I called them, the Oregon trees, in the middle there with Defoe and Eric Armstead. And just when they came out, I remember the first practice I saw, and I went, holy crap, what is this? You got those 2 huge tackles inside. You've got Bosa, who's one of the most refined pass rushing rookies you'll ever see. I mean, I was there for Khalil Mack's rookie year, and Khalil, he didn't have a sack his first 10 games as a rookie. Bosa came out breathing fire immediately. Pure technique, great get off, motor that's nonstop, a force in the run game. And then I saw Dee Ford all those years in Kansas City when he would be a rotational guy behind Justin Houston and Tom Bali, and he would flash, but he got hurt a lot. But he had a Derek Thomas, Vaughn Miller kind of first step. I mean, every time you saw D in Kansas City, I thought, is he off sides? And a lot of the times he was.
It was,
including in the AFC Championship game, the last game he ever played in Kansas City. But their skill set all blended so well. And I remember thinking, wow, this is one of the great fronts you'll see. And if they're able to stay healthy, they're going to wreak havoc. And you saw it right away the first game. And then you saw that Ram game at the Coliseum in October when they dominated the game on 3rd and 4th down. Where I really saw it was the Green Bay game in the regular season, that Sunday night game.
Sunday night game,
when Aaron Rodgers had those dark eyes, like, we can't block these guys. What are we going to do? But the reality was Dee Ford got the hamstring injury mid-November at home against Kyler Murray, trying to chase him down. He actually sacked him on the play, but we're seeing it right now. He pulled up, and I don't think Dee was ever the same. After that, I kept saying he's the X factor. If they get Dee Ford back to what he was pre-Kyler Murray injury, they're going to win the Super Bowl. And he just never quite got back to that same level. And if you look at it, just one Dee Ford play here or there in that Super Bowl may have been the difference. And obviously Dee's not been the same player since. But yeah, the Tampa game was big time defensive performances with the 2 pick six. But I remember just seeing it on the practice field was just how menacing they looked, and the get off of the 2 ends, and what they were doing with the wide nines and all that. Then it was just, you knew it was going to be the identity of the team on defense was going to be the pass rush, and then on offense, the rush, the running of the football, and the way they'd be able to dominate that line of scrimmage.
Well, 2 things. One, I've never learned more about football in a single conversation than I did when I talked to Larry Johnson, the highly respected defensive line coach from Ohio State, who developed Bosa, Tombali.
Larry Johnson Sr. That's Larry Johnson's father.
Yes, Larry Johnson Sr. at Ohio State. Shortly after Bosa was drafted, I thought I was going to get him for 10 minutes, just a quick chat. And this guy, just defensive line talk just came pouring out of him. We talked for an hour and a half, and just the detail to which he discussed, the hand scissors and everything that Bosa's doing. I just couldn't wait to see him on the field. And you're exactly right. I didn't get to see it during the preseason, right? So that's what was so cool about that Tampa Bay game, the debut, because you saw everything that Larry Johnson was talking about. This is what Bosa's going to do. He's going to disable with this arm, and then he's going to do all this. You saw it right away. So the technique for Nick Bosa, and you can't only credit Larry Johnson, you credit his dad, you credit his brother. I mean, he lives and breathes football. The other day, he was talking about how he slept with a football in his hand, every night when he was growing up. So he's obviously a guy who is able to absorb that technique. But that, to me, was awesome. 2, on the Dee Ford front, the numbers are crazy. Their sack rate was 4x when Ford was on the field versus when he wasn't in 2019. And I think we could apply that lesson to today, even though Ford is obviously not the same player that he was back then. I texted this to you the other day. If they can get 10 snaps a game, maybe 5 a game, if you find and pick and choose your spots with Ford, he could be a difference maker this year, because that's one thing that this team is really lacking right now. I think they only had 3 or 4 pressures against Kirk Cousins. I know he gets the ball out quickly, but they really need a complement to Nick Bosa. They don't have Buckner either. In some of these NASCAR package pass rushing situations, we've seen Ford line up on the inside. He was so effective against Minnesota in the playoffs. I don't expect 20 snaps a game, but if the 49ers can get 5 to 10 and they pick and choose their spots right, I think that could be what pushes their defense to that level they'll need to make a run here late in the year.
I agree with you, but I can't say I'm optimistic it'll happen.
Yeah, no, you can't be.
I think there was a degree of hope that he would be able to come back and play the Minnesota game, and he wasn't able to do it. So you're literally going, I wouldn't even say practice to practice, because he's not going to practice much during the week. He may get out there for a couple of drills, but when he flashes it, and they have other guys that can rush on that edge. Menahue, look at that guy physically. That guy is just, wow. He looks like Javon Kinlaw, but it tapered in shape Javon Kinlaw. His arms are so long. He's so tall. He's huge. Now, the other day, he had the rundown play. They didn't block him. But he has a little get off when he's powerful too. Arden Key obviously is flashed and all that. But D gives you something the other guys don't give you, because he does have a Bosa-like first step. But I just don't know where he's at right now. And realistically, I don't think they're counting on him to do anything.
No, it's found money.
It's found money. It's going to be extra. But yeah. I think he would be the perfect guy. And you could move him around. There's a lot of times he likes to do it out of a 2-point stance. I remember talking to him that first practice that I'm talking about when he got down that Wednesday before the Tampa Bay game. Because I remember him in Kansas City mainly out of a 2-point. And Bob Sutton liked to run a 34, so he was kind of an outside backer anyway.
Yeah.
But he would get down to that 4-point. And I remember, wow, I hadn't seen him do that much. And I remember asking him, he said, oh, no, I did it in college. I did it in high school. I grew up in that. But now it's mainly out of a 2-point. I think it's more that he can't really get down in either the 3 or the 4 because of the back. But he can do it. He can do it as a spinner where he stands up over a guard, and they play a lot of games with Bosa. But I think they're finding a creative way to generate pass rush. I think we underestimate how good DJ Jones is, not just as a run player, but an upfield penetrator. I think Eric Armstead, the numbers aren't there to where, he had the 10-sack year, but he's a very effective player in his own right, and he's such a load. But the key to the whole thing is Bosa. Obviously, I'm not sure that the Bay Area or even the league gives him enough attention when you look at, I guess he's leading his spot in the Pro Bowl voting, he and Juice. So I guess the fans are picking up on it. But that guy is just an absolute game wrecker. I think we take him for granted a little bit and we don't fully appreciate who he is. I mean, this franchise has had some great pass rushers. We mentioned obviously Cedric Hardman and getting Fred Dean was transcendent for winning a Super Bowl, and Charles Haley. I mean, you're talking about guys that got you over the top. Bosa's every bit of those guys, and the way he plays the run, you don't want to run at him. You don't want to run away from him. He never takes a second off. You were talking about how hard he works. He's out there before practice, getting ready to practice. While the special teams are out, they do a walkthrough before practice starts for about 20 minutes or so, and Bosa's on the side field, just cranking it up. So when he's ready to go practice, he's going to practice full. So he's just different level, energy and just constant effort. A lot of guys have to try hard because they're not as skilled. When you get his innate ability from his family and his lineage, and then the technique that he learned at the highest level from his dad. I mean, this is like the Manning family of, sacking quarterbacks.
Yep.
Is the whole thing. And then you go to Ohio State and get coached at the highest level by Larry Johnson, who had his brother, who had Chase Young. And I did an Ohio State game when they played the Big Ten championship a couple of years ago, and you see what they do. And then just the want, and this guy wants to be great. So Nick is just another level. With D, he most of the time he kind of just walks around. You don't think he's got anything left, and then all of a sudden he'll give you that quick D forward burst, the shoulder dip, and just give it to you in practice for like a nanosecond. And that's what you're talking about. That's all you need. And I would say more than 5. I think what you would want to do with him, not nickel, because you're in the nickel a lot. Certain nickel.
Yes, you pick your spots.
Third, and you pick the number. You're the analytics guy. 3rd and 7 and more. Not every snap, just some snaps, because he doesn't have every snap to give you. But when he comes in, they've got to have a plan. That gold rush, that turbo package is entirely different. If you've got D Ford out there with Bosa, with Armstead, you name what 4th you want to go with. And then you don't have to run as many games. You can just, go get them and get upfield and go. So if you could get a handful of snaps from him a game or in certain games, I mean, I'd even say a playoff game, he could be the difference maker. But I got to say, it's been hard because he hasn't been able to do it. So I'm not optimistic that'll happen. But if it does happen, that's a huge difference maker, as I thought back in 2019, David.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at it as there's a limited amount of bullets in that back, and it's not natural for a guy with that muscle mass that's that big and strong to get down in that stance and explode the way that he does off the line of scrimmage time and time again. He's now chronically injured because of it, but the rehab team, the doctors, they'll cobble it together. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find a way to give him a few more reps, and you have to fire those limited bullets, right? And you have to pick and choose your spots at where to fire them. So I agree with you. You have to stop the run to get into those 3rd and long situations. I think if he does come back, they really like Arden Key on the inside. They love that length and that athleticism working against those guards. And There's talent to like up front. It's not 2019. It's a different team. I know we talked about this on your radio show yesterday. And that brings me to what I think is the locomotive that's pulling the train this year. Back in 2019, it was the defense, right? Those guys, especially against Minnesota in the playoffs, 49ers weren't efficient offensively, but they still won by 3 scores. It's not going to work that way this season. If the 49ers are going to go far, the offense is going to have to show up on a week in, week out basis. They have over the past 5 weeks. But how sustainable do you see this? I know that there are some smoke and mirrors at play right now, especially without McGlinchey at right tackle. They're trying to figure that out between Tom Compton and Jalen Moore. But you do have to like a lot of how the 49ers are executing, both in the run and the pass games. But, I mean, you were talking about the run game with Deebo Samuel. They're not going to have him here against Seattle. Elijah Mitchell's doing a hell of a job, but I think they have enough weapons to make it work, even without some of their best pieces. There's just a lot more pressure now on the offense than there was in the past because we are talking about a different overall team as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, obviously losing Deebo is not ideal. I mean, he really is a chess piece. And the way I look at the game of football, and they've even blurred that a little bit with the quarterback being live in the run game. But basically, you have 5 stationary pieces, which are your offensive linemen. Think of those, we're playing chess. So those are your pawns. And then we have a quarterback, and that's the king. That's the guy everybody's trying to kill. But, you know, he's not live so much, but in certain offenses, Trey Lance, what Baltimore does, the quarterback is involved. So, but let's just say he's not. So you have the 5 offensive linemen, and you have the quarterback. So you have 6 pieces. Now we're playing with what we do with the 5 eligibles. And this is where you get the term of basketball on grass. And I think what Kyle Shanahan has done is blurred the 5 eligible positions of running back, wide receiver, tight end, where they're all interchangeable. You know, we talked about in basketball, it's positionless basketball. The Miami Heat started that years ago. The Warriors took it to another level where you have to play all different positions. And basketball is an up and down offense to defense in a moment of a second where it just kind of rolls that way. But in football, it's more stationary. But with Kyle and Mike McDaniel and Bobby Slowick and, you know, even going back to LaFleur and everything, what they have done is I got to ask Kyle this when I sit down with him this week. So you have the X wide receiver, you have the Z wide receiver, you have the F, which is the slot, you have the Y, which is the inline tight end, and then you can, you know, double Y, detach the Y, and then you've got a halfback and a fullback. And there are other positions they have on the field as well. But I think they cross-train all their players to play all these positions. How many people have lined up in a fullback position for the 49ers this year? A lot more than Kyle Juszczyk. It's probably a half dozen guys. I've seen Jawan Jennings there. I've seen George Kittle there. I've seen Jeff Wilson Jr. there. I've seen Deebo Samuel there. I've seen the running backs there. They move them all around.
Did you see Ayuk in the 3-point stance at tight end at Jacksonville?
Right. I mean, I tell you what, we haven't seen it yet, but I saw him line Deebo up at inside in the line. You know, so I think what they're doing is that they're blurring, and it's difficult for defenses to match up. You don't have time to match up. So Deebo is the ultimate chess piece, and that he's not so much a tight end, but you could line him up as a wing, an H-back. You could put him in line if you want. You know, why not? And then obviously he's a classic Z wide receiver, which is the split end, the move guy. But then all of a sudden, he goes from being the Z to your tailback. And what this does is all the pro football is based on offensive personnel. And they code it all the time. You see them on the sidelines with all the signs, 11, 12, 21, 22. It's all based on what of these 5 eligibles are on the field. And you code it by the running back is the first number and the tight end is the second number. So the 49ers say they're in 21 personnel. It's 2 backs, 1 tight end. That means you have 2 wide receivers on the field. But what Deebo does is he allows you to go from what they perceive to be 11 personnel, where you have 3 wide receivers on the field, 1 back and 1 tight end. And just simply by motioning him to the backfield, now you're in 21. So if you're in 11, the defense is going to immediately check to a sub package, nickel. They're going to get their big nose tackle off the field, and they're going to bring in a slot corner, a nickel back. And this is where Kyle, in order to diagram and not just call the game on Sunday, but to scheme it throughout the week, you have to be a brilliant offensive mind, but more so, you have to be a brilliant defensive mind to know what the code is on defense and what they're checking to based on what you're doing, and then you're trapping them. And where Deebo is special, and they don't have anybody really that can do this. I mean, you could give the ball to Ayuk on a jet sweep. You could give it to other guys. You could run Kittle on a tight end around. You can do all that stuff if you want. But Deebo Samuel is not just a wide receiver playing running back. He's a running back at the highest. This play you're calling up from Jacksonville where they pull Laken Tomlinson. Watch the way he follows the blocks here on the pull. Watch the way Laken Tomlinson gets out on space. Jihad Ward is the big Jacksonville number 6 player there who's a base end. Look at the way he sets up that block running inside of that. The George Kittle block as well. He's running behind the block so beautifully. Just look at the way he follows Laken Tomlinson's block here on Jihad Ward. And then Kittle's block. And then it follows the blocks, but then also dodges the defenders. This is not Cordero Patterson doing this. This is not Ty Montgomery. Those guys are wide receivers that they turn and hand the ball to. I really think Deebo Samuel is a running back. He's more of a running back than he is a wide receiver. And I would not be surprised. Now that you've got Elijah back, David, you don't necessarily have to do this. But I think Kyle's scheming it up to some degree. He's already done it, where you blur that line more and more and more, where he is more running back than he is wide receiver. Because I think his skill set and the subtleties and nuances of running the ball are much better than they are as a wide receiver in route running and uncovering, especially against man coverage. He's not great beating man coverage. He's found out how to sit down in zones. He's good at that, but not so much against man. So, I mean, just watch this play and you tell me, this guy a running back or is he a wide receiver?
Well, it's awesome too, because everything that you're talking about really with the 5 eligibles is on display. And yeah, the positionless skill position aspect of what the 49ers are doing. I mean, you have Kyle Juszczyk right there where my cursor is.
Where's he playing? Slot receiver.
Yeah, he's playing slot receiver, where that was his primary position at Harvard in college, right? So he's got experience running on the field, making big catches. Obviously, slower competition there than the NFL level, but he's obviously effective enough at it to be trusted in huge situations. We saw it in the fourth quarter after Jimmy Garoppolo completed that big third down pass to Sherfield. There was a big gainer to Juszczyk over the middle. You got Ayuk over here out wide. And then, just from a play diagram perspective, Trey Sermon, I think the motion sets the 49ers up in a little way here because Sermon's going out to the right flat. But I love the pull. I was telling you about this when we were texting about it. I love the pull from Laken Tomlinson, who I think is one of the more underrated guards in the league. Because you see Jihad Ward right here. Jihad Ward, don't be fooled by the fact he's standing up. This is not a light edge rusher. This is a 287-pounder. So, it's in a standard alignment. You might have the tight end, and it's a very good blocking tight end, and George Kittle take on the guy on the edge, but that would be a mismatch for the 49ers. Kittle's great in space. He's a great blocker, but I don't care what you say. 250 pounds against 287 is a mismatch. So in this scheme, you better have a guard that's mobile enough to pull and to get out there. And as you could see, that's exactly what Laken Tomlinson does. He's right there. He gets out there and he takes out Jihad Ward. And then you have George Kittle. You use his athleticism to burst up the second level and get the linebacker. So there's a hat on everybody at this point, right? Let's go a little bit further. There's a hat on everybody except for this defensive back right here. But Deebo Samuel knows, as you said, to burst through like a running back to avoid him. So Deebo Samuel's running style, Deebo Samuel's intelligence, and his vision and finding the hole like a running back makes that play work. And I thought that Kyle Shanahan had an extremely interesting observation about Deebo Samuel's burst. He compared it to Mostert's. He said that when holes are closing up, there are 2 guys on this football team, obviously not Raheem Mostert right now because he's hurt coming off surgery, but he said there's 2 guys on this team that have an extra gear that can make a closing hole work, from the offensive perspective. Raheem Mostert and Deebo Samuel. But you also combine that burst, that second gear that he has with the physicality. I mean, the guy is wide as well. So
Yeah.
you're dealing with a special physical skill set.
Well, Mostert, I don't know if it's a burst with him. He's just a glider where, because of his track background, and I don't think people realize how good of a track star he was. Uh, he just outruns angles. He outruns safeties. I think safeties think they have him under control because they have the angle on him. I can think of so many runs. The entirety of the NFC Championship game. The run he had to begin last year at the Jets, the first play of the game on the
Oh, that
toss
was crazy.
right. He just the angle. I think it was Marcus May. That's a good player. He just outruns angles. There's so many times you think he'll get 12 on this run, and then he gets 80. And he's just a deceptively one of the fastest players in the league. But it's a continual glide with Deebo, and this is something I think Deebo is been able to unleash this year because he's in much better physical shape. There are two plays that I think of: the 3rd and 19 tunnel screen to him in Chicago.
Season saver, maybe. They needed that
play. And I remember walking out to the bus with him after, and I said, "Man, could you have run like that last year?" And he laughed. Hell no. Now that's the turbo. It's like you're playing the Madden, and you hit the little extra button, and he just ran through everybody. Where once he approached, because it was a 3rd and 19. So I'm thinking, he may get the first down here. He got about 12 yards into it, and then right away, in fact, I said he's gone because he just hit a turbo Deebo where he went, woo, and he pulled by everybody, and it was like, wow, he just exploded. That was like a turbocharger. He wound up getting caught at the very end. He couldn't quite get in, but he took it. That was a 93-yard play, but he went back a few yards. It was an amazing play.
Yeah, so he probably ran 115 on the play, but with all the
one where
zigzagging.
The burst, it's different than Mostert, where Mostert's kind of there all the time. When he gets straight line on you, obviously, he can just, sprint like a sprinter. Then he pulls away. But with Deebo, it was kind of get through the muck. And then once he got it, he went, phew. And then the other play was the 49-yard run he had this last game against Minnesota. When he turned that edge, he was just pulling by guys. It was like, there's another level to this guy. So I think it's a combination of him working so hard, having a lot of soft tissue injuries his second year, getting hurt in the offseason and never quite getting up to run. This is the play you're calling it up right here. I mean, go back a little bit when you see the beginning of the play. That's the end of it when Peterson got him. But watch when he turns it right there, right? There's Brunskill's out in front, but there was just a jetpack on his running ability that was just uncommon. Where I think
it starts right here, right there. He picks up. You could see the defenders behind him. I'll stop it right before. You could see the defenders behind him, and then they just disappear right there. Yeah. And by the way, on both of the plays that you're talking about, 93-yarder against Chicago, and then this one, the 45-yarder against Minnesota, it's a different 49ers interior lineman that was
because that's
the second fastest player on the field. Yeah. So this is Brunskill running in front of him. Remember Mack in Chicago? It was Mack was way out in front of the play.
Yeah.
Which is another Kyle Shanahan skill set. He wants those offensive linemen to be really fast. Brunskill played tight end in college at San Diego State. We all know that Mack was the best center of his generation, and then in the 2010s, he's probably lost a step by now, but I don't think he's lost all that much. He could still move. Obviously, Trent Williams is a special athlete. Laken Tomlinson's developed, and the 49ers do have to figure out right tackle, but I've watched the tape already here a couple times from the Minnesota game, and they got the best performance so far out of Tom Compton. So if they could move in space with those offensive linemen and they can execute it the way that they have, when you have Deebo running in front of you, now they won't have him against Seattle, but if you hit that way, you play the game on your terms, you don't worry as much about the pass protection. And I think that's kind of the key for the 49ers. You have to follow your formula.
Yeah. And as far as the loss of Deebo, I think getting Elijah Mitchell back this last game and uh, just how impressive he was. I'm not going to say I'm shocked because this guy's played with bad injuries, David, all year. But to come back with this and to get it 27 times and get it 8 times on the last drive to pretty much milk the clock. I know Robbie missed the field goal, but you took the clock from 9 minutes to 2 minutes, and it was all because of him. I think they'll lean on more conventional runs. They'll still, run it out of the gun. They'll get edges. They'll run their Zorros, but they're, the Deebo. I don't know if anybody can do what Deebo can do. You can't take any other wide receiver and motion him and get that kind of running like we saw in the Jacksonville touchdown run. You're not going to get that. But I think you're going to get Jermichael Hasty back. I'm hopeful that he'll be back at practice tomorrow. I think Mohamed Sanu was close, which then opens up another weapon as far as the pass game. I think you'll see elevation from Juwan Jennings, Sherfield as well. So Deebo is just a huge piece in our master chessboard game that Kyle's playing against the other team's defensive coordinators or head coaches, whoever it is. But I think they're better served to lose Deebo. If this would have happened the week that you also did not have Elijah Mitchell, now you got a bit of a quandary. I think that's part of why they've decided to use Deebo more as a running back. And this goes back to actually the Ram game before, so they kind of overlapped a little bit. But, one guy we got to talk about is Elijah Mitchell. Who is this guy? What is this guy? How good is this guy? To get him in the 6th round. I mean, go back to you lost Mostert right away in that game, second carry of the season in Detroit. And then Elijah hits that run out the right side against the Lions, goes for over 100, runs well in Philadelphia, but gets hurt, misses some time, comes right back, highly productive. I was talking to you on the radio the other day with John Lund. How often has he been, stuffed behind the line of scrimmage for a tackle for loss? He gets what's blocked. He has breakaway speed. He has great vision. He's tough. And as a play caller like Kyle, that forward kind of Frank Gore forward body lean, where you think he got a yard or two, and he winds up getting 4 or 5. And I know Kyle was talking to you guys on the conference call on Monday that he was surprised. You think he's calling a play for 2nd and 8, and it's actually 2nd and 6. I do that all the time when I'm calling the game. I'm like, he's not quite down yet. He's still pushing. And then I think he got a modest gain of 2 or 3. Hell, he got 4 or 5 on that run. How did he do that? And if you're in a play caller position, there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
If you're calling a play and it's 2nd and 8 as opposed to 2nd and 6. If it's 2nd and 6, Kyle's going to run it again on 2nd down. So you just keep seeing this pattern. On 1st and 10, this team runs the football. And then when you get into the neutral downs on 2nd, he's still going to run the ball. And then it's up to Jimmy Garoppolo to fill in the spaces there. And that's where Jimmy's been so great. When Jimmy Garoppolo's at his best, he converts on 3rd down. And that's what he's been doing during this recent streak, the last 5 games. And then go back to 19 when they went to the Super Bowl. Jimmy's one of the best 3rd down converting quarterbacks in the league.
He is. Well, since Jimmy Garoppolo took over in 2017, there's been only one quarterback in the NFL that's been more efficient on 3rd downs, Patrick Mahomes.
Wow.
And I'm talking EPA per play, 3rd down efficiency. That right there is the stat that shows you where Jimmy is valuable for the 49ers and where they really missed him. This is what I like to say. Everybody says, oh, Jimmy relies on the run game. Well, the run game relies on Jimmy Garoppolo. It goes both ways.
Right.
That's football.
Right.
Smart football is symbiotic. The run game relies on the quarterback converting on 3rd downs, and the quarterback relies on that run game to take the steam out of opposing pass rushes. Because I'll tell you what, we'll pop open my favorite clip from this past game against the Vikings. This
you
was
got
the
a lot
third.
of cool toys. How do you do this? I like this. This is fun.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of geeking out with it. It's all new to me too. This one we can make big. This is the 3rd and 6 to Trent Sherfield from the end zone angle.
Yeah. Deebo's hurt now. He's not in the game. So you got
Deebo's hurt. And there's a couple things about this play. We'll just watch it in full speed first. Quick release, 1st down. But, I mean, I talk about the 49ers offensive line being athletic. In general, they're probably a little bit lighter than your typical pass protecting offensive line. And you talk about Elijah Mitchell and the importance of getting 2 or 3 extra yards on select downs. And this illustrates all of that. Because if you're in 3rd and 6, like the 49ers were here, it might have been 3rd and 7, you're in a 3rd and long situation where the defense can pin its ears back, where the defense can come with full momentum toward the offensive line. And I think that's where the 49ers really struggle. They struggle to anchor in pass protection. Just watch this. Watch how, especially Mac, just gets backed into Jimmy Garoppolo because the Vikings are rushing with reckless abandon. So that's the point of release. Garoppolo's throwing without any room to set a base. Mac is in his lap. Kyle Juszczyk right here is desperately stepping up to try to block Kendricks. And there's really just not a lot of room to make a throw. And Garoppolo flicks it accurately. If that's not accurate, it's Trent Sherfield gets killed. B, it's probably incompletion. And C, the Vikings have a very good chance to win that game. You don't get those Elijah Mitchell runs later in the drive if Garoppolo doesn't make this throw to Trent Sherfield. And I think it's just a great illustration of how you need both. With this line, you need that quick release. And you also need that run game because, as Kyle Shanahan has drawn it up, he wants to run at volume. He sees that there is value in running at volume against defenses that I think have generally downsized here over the years, right? So if he could run those 40 times a game, he's punishing other teams. He's taking their soul away, play by play. But you can't run at volume if you don't pass at efficiency. So everybody wants to take one side, but there's not one side. There's two sides to this coin.
Totally. It's complementary football. It's what we're talking about. So, I mean, what they've done during this winning streak is go 40-40. You're running the ball 40 times a game, and you're keeping the ball on offense 40 times a game, 40 minutes a game. So the defense is out there for about 22 minutes a night, a game. So it the 40-40 formula obviously works in football. But to your point, the reason you're keeping the ball on offense as long as you are is this team is converting on 3rd down at a much higher level, where they had like 52%, I think, going into the last game, as opposed to 25% the previous 5, of which they have lost 4 out of 5. So they weren't converting on 3rd down before. Now they are. So they're staying true to who they are. But Jimmy's got to pick up a lot of tough 3rd downs and fire up that play again, because Jimmy gets criticized a lot. And sometimes they don't see the field properly. But this is, to me, what epitomizes the gamer in Jimmy, the grittiness in Jimmy, the former linebacker. This is a muddy pocket. It all collapses quickly around him. And he does not stare down the rush at all. He is willing to take a shot. His jersey was covered in green right from the start of the game against the Vikings. That is a tough physical throw because he knows he's going to get tagged, and the whole pocket is collapsing around him. He does not panic. He comes, look where his head is. He's looking to his left right away. He comes right back to Sherfield. He's got to get the ball out. So it's not always the pretty Jimmy, the Patrick Mahomes, the Justin Herbert. Look at this guy. It's the gritty gamer that is Garoppolo, to stand in that burning building and not look for a fire escape and try to get the hell out of there. He's going to take his shot. He's going to get burnt a little bit. He's going to get tagged, and he's going to deliver the ball. And it doesn't always have to be the most perfect spiral. Sherfield did not create a lot of separation there, but this is the NFL. If you have leverage in the NFL, you're open. And it's going to he delivers that ball on time, on target. And then Sherfield, who hardly played at wide receiver this year, comes up with the biggest plays made. Obviously in the NFL, he had a touchdown early in the year, but this is just a gritty, tough element that allows you to run the ball so much on the early downs when your quarterback can deliver like that. And then your 4th, 5th wide receiver comes in because Deebo's out, Mohamed Sanu's on IR, and come up with a big play. That's winning football right there. That's how you finish these games off. If you don't come up with that play on 3rd down and you punt the ball back to them, you may lose that game.
Yeah, they're up 8 at this time. And again, in the overarching picture, I think a lot of people get a little twisted because they think that this 49ers team is just a reprisal of 2019. It absolutely isn't. So I'm sorry, without Sherman and without Verrett, who is supposed to replace Sherman, without D Ford right now, without Javon Kinlaw, who is supposed to replace DeForest Buckner, who's obviously now with the Colts, it's not a top 5 defense. The best you're going to get is probably somewhere around the top 10, but that's still a big difference from the dominant unit they had then. So,
which is why running the ball is so critically important to protect that defense.
You shield
you don't
that
want
defense.
That defense on the field for 35 minutes. You want them on the field for 25.
They've averaged, Greg, over this 5-game stretch, 38 minutes of possession, and that's 22 minutes of possession for the
40,
defense,
40,
right?
40 runs, 40 minutes of possession time.
Yep. So they're executing the formula. It takes those third down conversions, but your best defense is a great offense, and that's the locomotive that's going to have to tug the train this year. And there's still this perception that, Garoppolo is just being carried by his defense in his run game, whereas no, this offense is. I mean, it's still a 5-game sample. They played well, but I'm just outlining the formula of what it's going to take moving forward. And that's what it's going to take this season.
Yeah, but I think the defense is not like it was in 2019. The defense was overpowering. Their pass rush would devour the other team. Even in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes was really rattled in that game. He threw a couple of picks. He threw balls in the ground on slants. They had 10 points with 7 minutes and 13 seconds to go in the Super Bowl. And then they detonated on the Wasp play on 3rd and 15, and they went off. But at that point, your defense was dominating them. But the one commonality is the run game. And I know they're doing it completely differently this year than they did it in 2019. You don't have the pure speed of Raheem. But even go back to that first playoff win, the divisional, on Jan 11 of 2020 against Minnesota. Tevin Coleman was the leading running back in that game. He had 105 yards in that game. It wasn't Mostert until the next game. But Mostert mixed in a little bit, and you had Breed as well. But it is the running game. The running game is the bedrock of this team. It took them a while to reestablish it for whatever reason. They just were not able to move fronts the way they are now, but they are. And I think that's still the commonality. It's who Kyle Shanahan is. It's the Shanahan system, and it's evolved a lot from under center, stretch left, stretch right, inside zone here and there, boot and keep game off of that. Now it's gotten so wild where your running backs are taking jet sweeps or even just lining up, or wide receivers are lining up in that spot, and the way they get to the angle with the wide run, and obviously Elijah Mitchell being a younger back, being a rookie and groomed in college, it's more of a gun run, but you're still getting to that outside zone, or you're doing it sometime with a toss action. But the defense has changed personnel-wise and just a lot of factors there. But when you look at it, the identity of the team is clear, and that's it's. Although they're doing it differently, it's still the same end result here. Is they're going to try to run it on you. They're going to run it on first down, second down. If they can run it on third down, they will. If they can't, they're going to rely on Jimmy to make those short third and intermediate throws. Let's not get into third and longs. But even if you have to, like Chicago, 3rd and 19, you pull it out. Jimmy made those 2 throws in 2019 against the Rams.
Yeah,
on that Saturday night, 2 3rd and 16s, one to Emmanuel, one to Kendrick. So he can do it when it's there. But yeah, the defense is not 2019, just overpower you with the gold rush. But I think the rushing of the offense is different, but it's the bedrock of this team, and it's where everything else, comes off of.
And they're going to be probably facing their share of 6-man fronts moving forward. We saw, that formula from Arizona a few weeks ago. Garoppolo threw more. He performed fine. I think that's probably a game they win if Kittle doesn't fumble, if Ayuk doesn't fumble after those big gainers. So you have to be able to attack based on, the tactical look that the defense is giving you. And it's going to be fascinating to me to see what these defenses that the 49ers face over the final 6 weeks of the regular season come up with. But I think that the 49ers have diversified the offense in recent weeks. So that helps not only with the absence of Deebo Samuel, but it also helps even when you have everybody at full strength and teams are selling out to take away the run. Well, you have more options now. It's not Deebo just grabbing 80% of the passes. Now Ayuk is catching passes. George Kittle was relatively quiet last week, but he's probably going to be a big factor here while Deebo's out. So the 49ers are going to have to play chess as this moves forward, right? Garoppolo's there's going to be a game where he needs to throw 30 plus times to win. I guarantee that's going to happen. At some point, somebody's going to sell out enough to stop the run to where Garoppolo is going to need to do that. And I think Kyle's comfortable with what he has right now to be able to do that. We just don't know what week it's going to be. I'm curious how Seattle's going to play the 49ers because they showed up on Monday Night Football on the East Coast yesterday, and they just got it run down their throats, right? I mean, they were on the field the whole game. We talk
Yeah.
about the
They
40
didn't give
minute
up a
rule.
lot of points, though, Dave.
Yeah,
They were on the
but
field a lot.
yes, they were on the field a lot, but I'm wondering how that's going to play into their game plan against the 49ers team that obviously wants to run on a short week after a cross-country flight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've seen Seattle play the 49ers before. Last game was weird because Garoppolo got hurt, Lance came in. That was kind of ugly for the 49ers. But how's Seattle going to do this trying to play spoiler at home on Sunday?
Well, and going back to early in the year in the running game, the 49ers faced a string of 34 defenses to start the year. I think it was the first 3 or 4, and maybe 5 out of 6 were all 34 fronts. And that's really a 5-man front with the 2 outside backers up. And then you got to count for the Mike linebacker as well in pass protection. So they ran into a lot of stubborn fronts. And they were not running the ball as effectively. But it started to click. And it's hard to say exactly why. The Ram game, I think, is where they got their physicality back. But going into the game where you thought Jimmy's going to have to throw it around to win this game, it was the Jacksonville game. And they still were able to run the ball against Jacksonville. They were effective. And then obviously this Minnesota game, when you go into a game against Mike Zimmer, he's going to play with those 2 safeties high. And the one guy that obviously it triggers off of is Harrison Smith. And he brought him down early in the game. You could see it. I was looking for where he was going to line up every snap. And early in the game, he did start up in their classic 2 shell. And then Zimmer said, we can't, especially with all of their lack of defensive linemen. And the Everson Griffin up top of the Hunter and, just on and on it went. They didn't have their guys. They were light their 4 top defensive linemen in the game. Pierce wasn't available and Tomlinson was out due to COVID. They wound up playing Sheldon Richardson almost the whole game at end, and he played well. But I think he felt in that game with my depleted D-line, I'm not going to be able to stop their run. I got to bring Harrison Smith down. And he did. And the 49ers still ran the ball against them. So that's the ultimate strength of this team, is can they lean on teams with their strength, even when the other team. If I'm going into a game against the 49ers, I'm going against Kyle Shanahan. And I'm going against Mike Shanahan and Alex Gibbs and all of them. That's just what they do. So I would say I'm taking the running game away. I'm going to load the box to stop their run and make him throw the ball. And I'm going to make him throw the ball on first down. And I think that's what the 49ers got to be a little more balanced there. But Kyle does such a good job with personnel and knowledge of defense, like I said, and how they code things where he can get them into unflattering situations. Like, for instance, this last game, whenever you think of Minnesota and Mike Zimmer, but it goes back to when he ran Cincinnati's defense forever, and then he ran Dallas's and for 1 year in Atlanta. But now with Kendricks and Barr, what do they do every play? It's those 2 inside stack linebackers mugging up in the A-gap on every single snap. They're like Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs used to be in Chicago, where they're not going to come every play, but they're going to show the illusion of pressure every play right over the head of the center and the guards in each A-gap every play. So you've got to account for them. What do you do? Just ignore them? And they're not going to come every play. They're going to bail, or one's going to come, or they're both going to bail out. So how do you get them out of it? See what the 49ers did in this game. That's why lining up Kyle Juszczyk out wide as a wide receiver. So you just motion a running back outside the numbers. So if they're in zone now, they've got to widen out the zone to get to the width here. If they're in man, one of those inside linebackers has got to go pick up the running back. So how do you double A-gap? How do you double mug them if, the linebacker's out? So by just formationally knowing how they're going to line up, you're one step ahead of them. You're going to get them out of what they want to do, and it's out of their comfort zone. That's where Kyle is so smart and so effective with the whole group and how they come up with a game plan. So I hear you. And I think there's teams that, and they know that. They know they're going to take our running game away. But there'll be games when Jimmy has to throw it more, like the New Orleans game in 19, the Ram game, the Arizona games that he was able to win both times. And I think he's capable of doing that. But they're also at the highest level with their offensive brain power going to be able to dictate just the terms of the play by how we line up formationally. And that gets into the positionless football we were talking about earlier, where your guys are all interchangeable parts. You can line them up at any position. And now, how do you match up with our guys when they're in such unconventional alignments on offense?
Well, really early in this whole process, back when this 49ers staff was still implementing what we see now, which is basically the final product, right? I mean, it took a couple of years to build, but I talked to Mike McDaniel, and the quote that sticks out to me is, "We have to earn single high safety." So you talk about Minnesota, they play that two shell probably more than anybody else in the league. That's why the Vikings gave the 49ers trouble in both of those first two meetings, because the 49ers didn't really force Minnesota, especially in that 2018 game, didn't force Minnesota out of the two high safeties that Zimmer loves to run. But philosophically, Shanahan, McDaniel, they feel that they could put these defenses in compromised positions, whether they're running or they're passing. Just in general, they can compromise these defenses when they have to bring that second safety down. Because
Right.
that's when the defense is just on a very broad general level is a little over aggressive, and where Shanahan could really blast some gaps open, right? Whether it be through the run game or in the pass game closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think you're onto something. That's what I was watching this past Sunday. I saw that two shell alignment with Woods and Harrison Smith, and I said, okay, how long can they stay in this? And they could stay in it very long. And that's
Yeah.
how you knew that the 49ers had it.
And that's the evolution of offensive defensive football, which leads to the other side of the ball. And I think Belichick started this forever and ever, going back to when he had Patrick Chung and the McCourties, and they would be in their base defense, and they would have three safeties on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think Talanoa Hufanga is really an interesting player for the 49ers. And go back, you're the guy that does all the analytics. How many snaps was he on the field for, and how many was he on with two other safeties on the field? There was a time when he was on there with Jaquiski Tart, but there were a lot of snaps where they were deploying him as a third safety on the field in a dime with K1. And I think that's where he's just an X factor, where he's fast enough to match up. When you go into a game against Minnesota, yeah, you respect Dalvin Cook. That guy's a great player and so underrated. But those two wide receivers are just insanely good, and they're very different. So you got to stop those guys. So, but with Talanoa Hufanga, you can blitz him as well. He's kind of a wild card. He's kind of that, that chess piece that I'm talking about on offense with a Deebo, where you kind of move him around. With Talanoa, he's kind of a code breaker on the other side, where you look at him and he's a safety, right? So we'll run. No, you're not going to run on that guy. That guy's a box safety, and he also triggers. They blitz him a lot, so you have to code him as a guy that's live. And you bring him off of Bosa's side, which they do a lot. What are you going to do there? He's going to get a clean path. The question is, he's got to get on the quarterback earlier. So this constant matchup of, bring the second safety down in the box to slam the run game. Well, what if we have more safeties on the field? Now, we're not going to have 12 players on the field, but we're going to have different athletes on the field that can match up to the speed. Because if you bring another safety down, then you got one less guy in pass coverage. That's the concern there. But if you have speed on the field and then enough brawn to play in the box with a guy like Hufanga, I mean, for years they called it the big nickel. And the 49ers do that with Marcel Harris a lot, where they want a fast guy to play as a weak side linebacker, as a stack linebacker in the nickel. But then with Talanoa, he's just a wild card there. So that's the beauty of, you're forcing the defense to react to something, but those guys are smart too. How do you counteract when they think you're getting you into something you don't want to do? But we have athletes on the field to compensate for that.
Well, I thought that a critical play in the context of all that was Hufanga breaking up the pass to Tyler Conklin, right? Because he's showing he's developing in coverage now. He didn't give any space. And you could tell Kirk Cousins was the matchup he was going to go to from the snap. They saw Talanoa Hufanga. Let's test out the rookie. We know that he's good in run support. We know he can blitz, but if he's going to be covering here, let's go to our tight end. 49ers did a good job taking Jefferson and Thielen away.
And Thielen away the yo-yo motion, yeah.
Yes, and then but Hufanga gave no space to Conklin. So if the coverage keeps on coming along, he's going to get more and more time. I mean, Jaquiski Tart is on a 1-year contract. The 49ers brought him back to be the primary strong safety this year, but they wanted to work Hufanga into the mix. And if stuff continues progressing as it is right now, then Hufanga is going to be able to be there out on the field on every down. The snap division was 34 for Tart and 34 for Hufanga. I would have to look a little bit closer into the exact combinations they used, but there was a lot of that three safety action. And then, as you mentioned, there were different variations of that. But, people were looking at that wrong when Jaquaski Tart came back. They're like, oh, who should get the strong safety spot, Hufanga or Tart? It wasn't either or. It wasn't one or the other. It was both of these guys are going to play because I think the 49ers see the value of these hybrid players. You mentioned
Totally.
Marcel Harris and you mentioned Talanoa Hufanga. And with offenses starting to emulate what Shanahan's doing around the league, the 49ers defense needs to be able to guard that type of offense. I think players like Harris and Hufanga are big in that effort.
Yeah, and I think, with Tart, it's a financial thing, but he and Jimmy obviously work so well together. You may have to make a hard call on that. You can't keep them all, obviously, as we learned from DeForest Buckner. But I think Marcel Harris is someone else that can do that. I think it's interesting to have three safeties on the field. You're seeing it more and more with teams and the ability to use safeties in a variety of roles. Like we're talking about Hufanga and, what all the different things he can do. I don't think people fully appreciate Jimmy Ward around here for everything that he can do. Jimmy Ward can play single high safety and be extremely rangy and be able to cover. You're totally comfortable with him as your center fielder, protecting everything over the top. Then you can stick him down in the box, and he's a very good run support player. But what makes him so special is his ability at times to jump inside and just man match with a slot receiver and just play nickel for you. He does that against Cooper Kupp as well as anybody in football. And that's just so invaluable because they're going to dictate who you have on the field based on their formations. And the Rams are a lot of 11. A couple of years ago when they kept Everett and Higbee together, they were using more double tights. But now, Everett's in Seattle and they've got Van Jefferson and, they got OBJ now with the Woods. They like a lot of 11. So you can still match up with that when they roll right into it on third down by bringing Jimmy Ward down. So the interchangeability and the kind of the positionless aspect of what's going on offense, you have to match those athletes with athletes on the other side of the ball. So I like three safeties. Then you got K1, mixing in there. When you go to this alignment, you've got three safeties and three corners on the field. And K1's just a different corner. Very different, because I wouldn't even call him a corner. I think they have to separate guys that play nickelback versus corner in the NFL. I think they have to pay them differently. And I think there's a depressed market for nickelbacks, especially guys that can do both. Now, K1's strictly a guy that plays nickel, but the guys that can play outside in the base, then go inside and play as a nickelback, I mean, that's an incredible value. But K1 does it in a different way where he's almost like another linebacker on the field, the way they use him and how often they run that shark blitz with him. And he's a tough tackler. You always want the nickelback to be a good tackler because he's tighter to the line of scrimmage. So I think that, the whole thing there, I think the one thing, frankly, though, David, and Emmanuel Mosley's playing terrific. The loss of Jason Verrett is really, I think, the one aspect of this secondary that's just, there is an area of vulnerability. And Josh Norman's had a hell of a career. That year they went to the Super Bowl in Carolina. He was a first-team All-Pro player. They franchise tagged him. They wound up rescinding it there in Marty Herney in Carolina. But he's someone they attack. They do attack him. He's a lot more physical than I thought he was. I thought he was strictly a zone corner before he got here. But he has a physicality to him. I kind of wonder about him, being more used inside, like I thought with Sherman at the end of his run here, more of a safety quality. But he's someone they attack. And when I look at the defense and areas that do concern me, they clearly target him. And whether a lot of times you get called for pass interference and holds because you get beat. You just can't, guys beat you off the jam or, he's behind and he gets his hips flipped. He does that a lot where he plays bail technique and he'll throw his ass toward the sideline. And then he's giving the receiver the outcut. How do you cover that? If you're opening up, you're throwing your butt to the sideline, you're opening up to the field. All they do is snap it off. The moment you turn that way, they go that way. How are you going to get back? With the arm strength of these quarterbacks and the refinement of the route, it's hard to cover. So I think, Fred's injury going into the Seattle game, Aziz Al-Shire played so well. And I saw him play at FAU in college with Lane Kiffin. I know he can be a scraper and go sideline to sideline and run the green dot. But when you have a young player on the field, they're going to go at him. They're going to make him step just one little bluff step the wrong way. They're going to attack. And then the other side of it is the area I think that they're still somewhat vulnerable on the defense is to the offense's left, defensive right, because they clearly have been targeting Josh Norman there.
Yeah, when Verrett went down, I think people probably developed a greater appreciation for what Richard Sherman brought to this team back in 2019. I think he had a good year. That was really his final great year, right? As he was turning into an older player, but it's invaluable to have that dependability on one side of the field. And with Sherman, he also had a reputation to where quarterbacks didn't even really try to look that way a lot of the time. And it changed a lot of things schematically. And the 49ers thought that they might be able to get at least a partial recreation of that dynamic with Verrett. And then he tears his ACL in the first game of the season. You have the one really redeeming quality from Norman right now are the forced fumbles, 7 of them, leads the NFL. They haven't had real fumble recovery luck yet this year. The 49ers are still only recovering something like 35% of the fumbles they've created. You generally expect that to be around 50-50 if you create enough of them. So we'll see if some of that starts falling in their favor. But you're absolutely right. This weekend is Russell Wilson's a veteran. He has targets. I mean, I don't care how much Seattle's struggling. They will be facing a shorthanded 49ers team. And I guess that's how we can wrap this up. Well, what do you expect moving forward on this two-game road trip? I know that Cincinnati's playing good football right now. Seattle obviously isn't, but it's still Seattle. I don't know when they were last trying to play spoiler against the 49ers. It's normally the 49ers trying to play spoiler against the Seahawks. Tables have turned there. You've got to believe this is going to mean a lot to Seattle because they're at this point of desperation where they might not even be thinking about playoff chances anymore. They're probably thinking about let's ruin the 49ers season and then cross the next bridge when we get to it. And that's a tough team to play. That's a dangerous situation for the 49ers, I think, heading on the road.
Yeah, they're two entirely different games. The Seattle game, just watching them on Monday Night Football, Russell Wilson's not healthy at all. He has the same injury that Elijah Mitchell has. He has a broken middle finger. I don't know where he's at in his recovery. They did take the pin out. You can't play quarterback with a pin in your finger, but he cannot control the ball. He can't throw it. I saw it at Lambeau his first game back. They didn't score, and he could not execute throws. In this game Monday night, the first third down, he had the tight end Everett on an outcut, first down. He just sails the ball right into the sideline.
Yeah, I saw that play.
What was that? and then he came back on the next drive, David, and he threw the touchdown pass to Everett. And there was a linebacker that was sitting right there. And
it was a tiny window.
I watched it back. I'm like, how did that ball get through there? So then you're thinking he's Russ. But then the rest of the game, awful. I mean, there was one over the middle on an in cut. I think it was to Lockett, and the ball just like a helium ball. It just sailed, had no chance. And he's just that's the middle finger on your throwing hand. For Elijah Mitchell, you can glove that up and play with the pin in there, and you're not a quarterback. At quarterback, the ball comes off these two fingers. There's no other way. Some quarterbacks grip the point of the ball with the middle finger. Some it's the other finger. There's no way to avoid that. Some don't even grip it. They have the laces, but that's a power in pitching. That's the power finger, these two fingers, So there's no way he can throw the ball. I mean, if he's over the injury, and Pete was saying going into the Monday night game in practice, he's the best he's been, and he's spinning it again. Are you kidding me? He cannot throw the ball. He did find a way to get him down at the end, but on that last drive, all he kept going to was the middle, the back out of the backfield over the middle on the check down. He kept doing it over and over and over again. And then he ran for a first down, and he can do that. And then once he got close enough at about the 30, he took a shot and Washington busted, and Freddie Swain's wide open for a touchdown. But his inability to throw the ball with accuracy was wow. Should he be playing? I mean, they're 0-3 since he's come back. And his mind is far superior to Geno's and the whole knowledge of the offense. But Geno Smith can throw the ball. Geno Smith throws a slant as well as anybody in football. He's got a powerful arm. So part of me is wondering, they clearly rushed him back. He's not able to execute throws like that. And then on defense, you got some guys that can be attacked. The loss of Shaq Griffin is a problem. They were attacking Sidney Jones the other game. DJ Reed, we know him well. They got playmakers. I think in this game, when we go back to when the 49ers went up to Seattle last year, their defense was horrible, historically bad. And then Ken Norton Jr. just kept blitzing Bobby Wagner the whole game in the A gap.
Right up the A gap. That was the Hronis Grasu game.
I never saw him blitz that much ever. And it was like, he just wrecked the game. So I don't know. The game against the 49ers, the first game this year, was it October the 3rd? Jimmy got hurt in that game. Jimmy got hurt. Kerry Hyder Jr., his former teammate here last year, hit him on the third play of the game. And they went right down the field and scored. But as that game went along, Jimmy started to deteriorate. You could see it. And Jimmy even said, his calf, it was his left calf, was bothering him so much in that game. Or was it right calf?
Yeah.
That he had to, it started to hurt his chest because he had to overcompensate. And then I think that impacted him in later games throwing the ball. So he didn't have his base. And Jimmy's a base thrower, because he's not a strider with the front leg. He's like a golfer where he just kind of pivots the front toe, and it's all torque and it's all that. And if he doesn't have his legs, so that game went sideways. They were controlling the game, and then Seattle got the big one, the screen out to I think it was Alex Collins. They got rolling, and then they scored before half, and then Jimmy couldn't play the second half, and Trey came in, and the offense was obviously different. And then Trenton Cannon gave him a touchdown on a fumble on a kickoff return. So that game went sideways. So I don't know how to expect, plan for this one. I would say don't underestimate Seattle. I know they're 3-8. They have a lot of pride. They've never been this bad since Russell's been there, but there's a lot of factors. And I think he's hurt. His finger's not right. Now, all that being said, it could get right between.
It could get right before Sunday, yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
and it probably will.
the touchdown pass he threw to Gerald Everett was like, wow. But he threw one out to DK Metcalf on the last drive. But other than that,
pattern, yeah.
It was like he cannot execute throws. He cannot throw the ball NFL quarterback caliber because he has no control over where the ball's going. But they know the 49ers. Well, this is like kind of that Ram 49ers games from last year where they know you so well that it's going to be a problem.
You can't take it for granted.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking that one. Plus, it's the noise there. It's the whole deal. It's hard to play up there. And then Cincinnati, I haven't looked at them yet. Obviously, the wide receivers are really good, and the quarterback's on point. Their defense is good. Going into this year, we had the 17th game. This is the 17th game. Last place, two teams from last year in the NFC West and the AFC North. And you thought, well, it's a lot better than playing Pittsburgh or Baltimore or Cleveland. It's not turning out that way.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now, I'm not going to say this, but, I think you'd go into it thinking you'd take a split, right, of these two. It's possible you get them both. I'm not saying they can't. But the other side of it, you don't want to have happen is lose.
Yeah.
But
no, you
they've
take
been
the
a better
split.
road team this year, but the Seattle game is always scary because they know us so well. And then Cincinnati, it's the fear of the unknown. And just that's a red-hot team that's got a lot to play for. Plus, that game's got flexed back into the late afternoon window, which will help a West Coast 49er team not having to wake up at the crack of dawn to go play that game. But it also tells the people of the Queen City of Cincinnati, we're back on the NFL's radar now. We're playing in that late afternoon window.
Yeah, and in the East Coast, that means it's going to be a night game, right?
Yeah.
It's going to get dark in the first quarter, so
yeah.
Helps me. I'm coming up from Nashville. I'm going to Nashville really quick on Friday.
Why are you going to Nashville? You know somebody there, David?
Yeah, well, you know her too. My girlfriend lives out in Nashville. Say hi to Margot right now.
We shared a grasshopper together.
Yeah, she got you to order it, or did you get her to order it?
I think we went there together. I don't know. There was a minty. I'm not normally a minty drink, but it worked out well.
Well, I was going to have to wake up at 5 a.m. to make the drive up to Cincinnati.
Oh,
So then I heard it got
so you're
flexed
going
back.
to
It's a lot.
Nashville, then to Cincinnati?
I'm leaving from practice on Friday to Nashville because she's hosting a big Christmas party at her house. So I'm going to be there on Saturday, and then I'm going to head up
See,
to.
that's what puppy love does to you. Insane thing.
Hey, it's a fun place down there. And we get to
Uh,
go on Christmas, but
December 23rd,
because
not quite
yeah,
Christmas, 2 days before. Yeah.
yeah, a couple days, and then but you got to fly right out, right, with the team. I guess right
Yeah, but
after the
we could
game.
hit
So
Honky Tonks on. They're going to be open on the 22nd. Now
yeah,
Wednesday, we could hit that a little bit
22nd. Let's do it. Let's
because
do
the Thursday's a
Seattle.
night game, so I got all day to nurse my grasshopper hangover. Well, good.
Yeah, so do I.
We'll
You know,
break it over on the
you ran
second.
into me. I was so glad I wasn't calling any games or doing anything. The other day, I think it was during the Rams game, I couldn't talk, and you got all
Oh, you
freaked
lost
out.
your voice?
You saw me. I lost my voice.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
are you
that's right.
sick? I'm
That's
like,
right.
yeah.
That's right.
But voice is back. We're all good. We're
No,
ready
you're
for the
good.
stretch run.
See, the
Yeah.
one
Well,
thing that scares me about you could clearly do my job, but there's no way in hell I could do your job. So that's why I like hanging around you.
well, I think you're the best there is in the Bay Area at this. Obviously, your versatility, the number 5 back there shows it. So I'm
Jeff
really happy that you
Garcia.
came on.
Jeff Garcia. No, it's Trey.
Yes, Jeff Garcia, Greg Papa, and Trey
Trey
Lance. But
Lance.
right now, I see the Papa on the jersey. But
Indeed.
no, Greg, seriously, thanks so much. I've
Hey,
actually learned so much about the game just talking to you. You know, I talk about Larry Johnson and those guys, but you are a true student of the game as well, and it's going to be a lot of fun being able to talk with you throughout this 49ers stretch run. Everybody, make sure you listen to Greg's show on KMBR and turn down the volume on the TV this weekend and listen to KMBR. I'm sure a
but
lot of
maybe
people already
not
do
this
that.
weekend because you know who's doing the game this weekend on
Who?
TV? Kevin Harlan.
It's CBS.
It's the CBS game.
CBS. Oh, because it got flexed out of Sunday Night Football, so CBS was able to pick it up. Yeah.
We haven't had
Oh yeah,
Harlan do a 49er game in a
game in
long
a while.
time, so I may have to drop during the game at some point. No regard for mankind. No.
You know, he has the basketball voice, but he's able to adapt the football. I mean, we began this with a talk about play-by-play guys, and this is one more thought I wanted to share with you. You know, the Steve Young Vikings run. I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 88. So I grew up with Pat Summerall and John Madden being the soundtrack to epic 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Packers games. The one awesome thing about the Steve Young Vikings run is that Lon Simmons called it for the radio in his style, but Pat Summerall called it on TV in his style. And both of those guys did it in their respective styles. So Summerall, it was great as well, but it was the understated Summerall style.
Young,
yeah,
waited 18 seconds, touchdown.
touchdown. But you think of he was able to just sit back and you talk about the difference between TV and radio, and I thought Summerall illustrated that really well. He let the crowd breathe, and he made the moment feel like it was huge every single time.
And he was a perfect partner for John Madden. You couldn't allow Madden to be Madden. You know what they were looking at? There was 2 broadcasters they were trying out that they were going to put with Madden the next year. And it was actually it was the catch game, but it was the Vince Scully who called the
Dwight Clark
call. So they tried him out on television, and it was Scully and John Madden, and it was Summerall, and it was John Madden, and it was Terry O'Neill who made the call. He wound up leaving CBS and becoming the executive producer of NBC, but he paired Summerall with Madden, even though Vince Scully is the greatest broadcaster that's ever been. But there'd be no John Madden if Vin was there, because Vin would have dominated it. That's just his style. So they're the perfect combination. But there's even a name going back even longer that you're too young, but since we are on a YouTube channel, the YouTube videos have got it all. Fire up Ray Scott, who was the voice of the Green Bay Packers. I think he did some Minnesota Twins baseball as well, but he was the Pat Summerall of the 1960s on CBS, and Vince Lombardi's Packers and all the great games. And that was Ray Scott who was on the call, and he was classic for the understated TV call where he said nothing. He just say star, Horning, touchdown, Packers. That was it. That was
Love it.
Call. So when I hear Lon Simmons and that style, or more Summerall because it's television, I think that really was the Ray Scott influence they all had from the 1960s.
I'll tell you my opinion. I think there is nothing more annoying or amateur sounding than a TV broadcaster who talks too much.
Yeah,
Especially in a big game.
it's hard.
I get it when there's no crowd. Sometimes I guess you got to fill
Yeah,
it up. But in a big game, if somebody's talking too much, it's just like
yeah,
shut up.
yeah. That's why
Let
it's
you
hard for
know.
me when I jump in and do preseason TV because on radio you got to talk so much. But the good thing I have is my partner Tim Ryan talks more than any analyst ever born, so I don't get a chance to say much at all. So when I'm doing TV with him, I just let him have the whole game, and then just kidding, T Rock. I know he's listening. So
I
uh,
gotta get Tim on. I love talking football with
oh, you
Tim as
guys.
well. Yeah, he's. You guys have? Do you guys still do that on? I haven't had a chance to watch this year on Mondays. Do you still do
No, we did
the
that last year
replay?
during the pandemic. We were allowed. So because you're talking about the 49ers replay, we would replay the
Yeah,
game
that was
an hour.
great
We did
television.
we did it we did it every Monday. That was allowed to us just as a one time only because we lost the 4 preseason telecasts in 2020. So what the league said was you got to give your partners that don't have any, they didn't want to pay all these TV partners back money because there's no preseason games. So we did a couple of things. We did a replay of the NFC Championship win against Green Bay. We did a couple of special things, but what we did every week was Tim and I went back on a Zoom like this and we talked about kind of like what you and I did. We picked out maybe 20 of the best plays, and then he and I on a Zoom would go back and talk about it. And they'd splice it to our radio call. I loved it. What I did the night before the game of the next week, I would go back and watch that, and it would remind me of all that I was remember from the game before. All my thoughts were fresh. All Tim's thoughts, obviously, and it wasn't just the call of the game. I go back and listen to every radio call. In fact, I'll do it probably tonight after I leave you from the game on Sunday. And then sometimes I go to bed listening to that before the game the next week, just to remind me of moments in the game, which is different than watching it back. Because when I see it live, when I call it, I see things that I'll never see again because I didn't see the game. So that was fun. What we did last year was an hour long recap of the game, but the NFL won't allow any replay of the games anymore. They replay it themselves at NFL Network, and they have their shortcuts that they package. But that was just a one off because each team lost their preseason telecast in 2020.
Got it. Well, it was fun while it lasted, and I guess we
Yeah,
could talk more on YouTube now
we can
because
do it
there's a
on
little extra
YouTube every
time.
week. We could
Yeah.
you, me, and Tim would be quite a trio. That'd be
We
fun.
actually, I mean, let's talk to him in Seattle. We should get him to come out with us one of these days before one of the
Yeah,
games. In Nashville would be a lot of fun. I think
yeah,
he'd be
that's a
all
hard
for
one
it.
because of the short week. But the good thing is that the next game is a night game, so that game will kick off at like 7:30 in Nashville, right? Central time zone. Is Nashville East or Central?
It's Central, so 2 hours
7:30.
after the East Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be 7:30.
So yeah, it will. That could be fun. Well, we'll talk to him at
Yeah,
practice
we'll
one of
figure
these
it out.
days. I'm excited to get back out there tomorrow. I mean, it makes our jobs a lot easier when these games are compelling, and they're going to be
Oh, without a
compelling
doubt.
moving forward. So
We got a
it's
string
going
of
to be
playoff
great.
games coming. String of playoff games to get to the playoffs. So fun.
Yeah, and that would also mean more cities to see because they're going to be road games. I highly doubt the 49ers win the division, so
You
we'll
never
see that.
know. You never
Yeah,
know.
never say
You
never.
never
Never say never.
know. You
All
never
right,
know.
everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thanks to Greg,
Thank
Papa.
you.
That was awesome. Everybody, subscribe to the channel and follow along. There's going to be a lot more content coming. And if you see either of us in Seattle, make sure to come up and say hi. We'll talk to everybody soon.